Hi, my name is Jacqueline Lyon. I am launching this channel, Jacqueline Lyon Editing, in order to help writers become the best writers they can be. I am an editor. I work for the company of Dot and Dash, which you can check out in the links below. We do everything from developmental editing to sensitivity reading to beta reading and author coaching. So if you need a coach and an accountability buddy, we can fill in for that role and make sure you get your projects done. So I work for a company and I work with writers and as well as other editors in order to improve the craft of writing. So I am launching this channel to help out, and I thought it would be a perfect place to start with the first step. Because there's a lot of writers who have these great ideas. New writers and even veteran writers get really excited for their projects. You know, they've got characters waiting to explode from their skulls, like Athena from Zeus's head. And you've got plots waiting to like run out of your guts, and you've just got characters and plots and settings, and it's all right there. But every time you sit down, you get to the computer, you put your hands on the keyboard, and something stops you. Something, that little voice in your head that says, I can't do this, or I'm afraid to do this, or those worries that just spiral and spiral and spiral, or whatever it is, you just can't do that first step to start the project. Let's address this for newer writers, as well as anyone who just wants to start their projects. I have 3 ways that you can combat this fear, you know, laugh in the face of fear, or else just sneak out the back way and hope it don't find you. My first tip for going after fear is focusing on quantity rather than quality. I think a lot of people get stuck up on the perfection part of their writing, the aspect of it has to be just as good as it is in my head as it is on paper. But I have a story for you that proves that you should focus on your quantity, not your quality. This is the story of a ceramics class. You might have heard it before. It's a true story of a ceramics teacher who decides to do an experiment. They divide their class into A and B. A group will be graded on the quantity of pots they make. So if you make 60 pots, you get an A. If you make 50 pots, you get a B, so on and so forth. And for group B, they will be graded on the quality of 1 pot. So they only have to make 1, but it has to be flawless. But by the end of the semester, something unexpected happened. The best pots, the best quality, the best finish, the best creative product was coming from Group A, the students who had been making pot after pot without regard for quality, whereas Group B had spent the whole semester focusing and reading and researching and questioning what is flawless mean, whereas Group A had been making and learning from their mistakes especially. This points to how creativity is a process, and it needs to have those mistakes. It needs to be done with the doing. You need to be able to put as much work out as possible so you can learn from that work. Finishing your projects, starting your projects, it's all the important steps to getting those wonderful pots in the end. What do? Make your crappy pots, you know? Write bad fan fiction, write purple prose, talk about heaving bosoms. Actually, don't do that. Ladies, if your bosoms are heaving, you need to see a doctor. Alright, so quantity over quality, and let's move on to number 2. And I have another story for you. This is a story of an archer and her master. The archer is practicing. She has practice and practice and practice. She's done the next step. But every time she notches her arrow and she lets her arrow fly, it misses the target. She just, arrow after arrow keeps going into the bushes and away, and she just keeps missing. And she turns to her teacher and she says, I have been practicing. Why do I keep missing? And the teacher says, where are you looking? And she says, I'm looking at the target, of course. I'm keeping the target ahead of me. And the teacher says, that's where you're going wrong. Look at your stance. Look at your elbow. Look at your hand. And then put your arrow back and let it fly. If you are only looking at the target, you're missing a lot of the picture. So first of all, look at your stance. That means, are you fed? Are you well rested? Are you, in an emotional state to be writing? Where is your stance coming from? Is it a strong stance? Do you feel ready to write? And then, if you've got your stance down, if you've looked at the process, then look at your elbow, look at your hands, which is basically the process of word by word, page by page, the little bits and pieces that make up the whole. Do it one little bit at a time. Because if you look at a mountain and it's just huge and overwhelming and you think, I'll never get to the top. But if you look at your hands, one handhold after the next, you're going to reach the top in no time. So this is the story basically of watching yourself as well as keeping your target in mind. But the target is not as important as your execution of it. All right, let's move on to our third and final mini lesson. And that is be playful. This thing that stops us, this wall, mostly just comes from fear. Fear of the imperfection, fear of not being good enough, fear of yourself, like being turned inside out and being insufficient. And one of the key ways to combating fear is through being playful. I have a final story for you. This comes from Imaginative Writing by Janet Burroway, and I'm going to read from her first little introduction. What she says is, my creative writing workshop exchanged a few classes with a group of student choreographers. The first time we came into the dance theater, we writers sat politely down in our seats with our notebooks on our laps. The choreographer dancers did stretches on the carpet, headstands on the steps. Some sat backwards on the chairs, one folded herself down into a seat like a tea bag and a teacup. When they started to dance, they were given a set of instructions. Group A is rolling through up and under. Group B is Blue Tuesday. Group C is Weather Comes from the West. The choreographers began to invent movements. Each made up a line of dance. They repeated and altered it. They bumped into each other, laughed, repeated, rearranged, and danced through it. They did it again. They adjusted. They repeated. They danced it through. Nobody was embarrassed, and nobody gave up. They tried it again. One of the young writers turned to me with a face of luminous discovery. We don't play enough, she said. You wouldn't ask a painter to paint a 6-foot drawing without doing doodling first. You wouldn't ask a tumbler to do 6 flips in a row without stretching first. You wouldn't ask any athlete to run 6 miles without any preparatory steps. Writing is a creative process, and that means focusing on playing as well, letting your imagination just run, letting your mind just run, be able to discover what you need to discover within this story. Give yourself room, give yourself permission, give yourself that little bit of, it's all right, go ahead, and be playful. That kid inside you wants to write. There's a reason you need to write and put it out there, and part of that is play. As adults, we don't really value what it is to play. And as writers, I think we need to go back to the basics of just exploration. So in summary, we want to focus on quantity instead of quality, focus on the process and not the product, and number 3, be playful. I hope some of these advice pieces allow you to shift your mindset and just get down and get started with that project. It can be overwhelming. It can strike that string of fear, but the only thing for it is to start. Again, I am Jacqueline Lyon. I work for Dot and Dash. If you would like any help with your projects, please check us out in the links below. Shoot us an email, as well as if you would like, you can leave a comment in the section below and let me know what you would like to hear next. We can do tips for your debut novel, we can do editing processes, we can do common mistakes within a beginning writer's first kind of works. There are all sorts of options. Let me hear from you, tell me what you think, and I'll see you next time. Happy writing, everyone!